Well, welcome back into the country farm garden here in Mid-Norfolk. I thought I'd start in a slightly different location this morning from our normal garden tours. Front of the house, got an accompaniment of wood pigeons and crows in the distance. Sun's just coming up. It's 6:15 here in Norfolk. It looks like it's going to be an absolutely gorgeous day. So let's have a walk around this garden and see what's coming up this time of year. This lovely tall camassia. It's just about finished its flowering season. They do come out and flower very, very quickly, but we are going to let this one seed rather than deadhead it. We very successfully collected seed last year of camassias, and we've got some lovely lung plants which are just being planted out, so I'm keen to try and extend our collection of this one. Such a stunner, really tall bracts standing at around 3.5–4 feet. A little bit of campion just filling in behind it, giving us that blast of powder pink colour. But just look at these peonies. They're nestled in this very mean little border on the western side of this wall that forms the boundary to the courtyard. But the buds on these really looking hopeful. Some of these plants, it's really nice just watching them develop and the buds form. All too fleeting when the peonies do eventually open, but I think we're going to get an absolutely spectacular display off this one, probably in not too many weeks' time. And then a Montana clematis, I think it's probably Rubens, this one. Nice big flowered variety, 4 petals with that yellow centre. Really tumbling over this wall. It's actually flowering better on the other side, which is in the morning sun. Gets far better light on that side, and we had to give it quite a hard prune back on this aspect just to get into this border at the end of last season, so not doing as well as it usually does. Little drifts of forget-me-nots just wheedling their way through. This grass bank's left to go semi-wild at this time of year because it's full of crocus, and here are the crocus leaves just gradually dying down. Got that lovely little white flower that just drifts down this bank as well. Anemone, a wild one. Well, whether it was originally wild or not or planted here, I don't know, but it's colonised that bank really beautifully. Remnants of the dog training still in for the last of the Narciso. Just look at these. It's incredible with some of these varieties just how long they go on trickle flowering. This little multi-headed one still giving us some colour here, but the rest of the bank now almost completely back to green. Just the last little bits of bluebell, which again starting to colonise this bank for us. It's all completely self-seeded. We've introduced none of that into there. I should just show you this wisteria, which almost at the end of its flowering period can get quite a extended flowering of wisterias by selecting your variety and selecting where you position them as well, because that will make quite a bit of difference. This one's extending right the way along the front bay of this old farmhouse, and you can see it right under the bedroom window there, running through the rose and quinces. This is actually the same plant almost 30 feet away from where the roots are. It's got all the way around this bay to meet this little one, which is the same variety but just has done nothing over the 10 years it's been planted here. These roses are just about to start flowering. I've got several different varieties planted in here, all of which have been in probably 60 or 70 years and predate our ownership of the house. So I couldn't tell you their names, but they do reliably flower every single year here. Now what's really popping this week is these euphorbias and the azaleas. Just let's come round here. Haven't got them in full sun just yet at this time of day, but you're still getting this lime green effect with the euphorbias. I do like these planted with the ferns as well. That's actually a Philadelphus in the background there. Again, we've chosen a very light-leaved, almost yellow leaf variety to pick up the colour as it wraps around the base of this flowering, I think it's a crab, some form of red-leafed crab, because it does have little red crab apples on it later in the season. That was in full flower last week, almost finished, but then we pick up with this colour under here, more euphorbia, but this is the one we've got sprinkled around the garden. It's not particularly vigorous, this one, Takes a bit of looking after, but it's worth growing because you get this lovely orange bracts on it just at the tip, and then the dark red stems and the striated leaves. Very interesting, and can, if you get a big enough clump of it, give you a real splash of colour. But just look at this real shocking combination of deep reds, lime yellows, whites, and the orangey yellows. That is our azalea planting here. Again, been in situation here probably for 50 or 60 years, and we've actually lost one of them over the course of that really dry summer we had a couple of years ago. They really weren't happy with that. The little blue early flowering one, I don't know if anybody else has experienced that. These larger flowered versions seem a little bit more robust, but that tiny little blue flowered one, just afraid it dehydrated really, despite us trying to water it as best we could, just didn't keep on top of it. Let's just walk you down through into the long border that runs down the side of the orchard. Getting a lovely little just drifts of these self-seeded bluebells just working their way through what again is quite a fertile area of this border under this old apple tree. It's been full of spring bulbs, all of which are now just putting their goodness back into the bulbs for the following season. Got a little bit of dieback on this apple tree, as you can see. It's a job I've been meaning to get around to for quite some time, and that branch that's lying on the ground over there really needs taking out, but it's waiting for the spring bulbs to finish before getting in there, because there's going to be a little bit of collateral damage when we go in with a chainsaw. Just look at the bluebell drifts under the old oak tree, mixed with forget-me-nots. The primrose now just about finished, but still I just love this lime green foliage as it sort of just fills in, and plenty of young seedlings coming in here. So what we're going to do is just give that a helping hand by spreading them a little further into that dry bank at the back now it's being cleared of the ivy. So we're trying to keep the ivy from running forward into this bank and swamping things. Just allowing a little drift of cow parsley as a sort of header to heights of this, just give you that depth as you look through it. But this border is actually quite problematically full of ground elder mainly, and some nettle. I have to really work this one quite hard. It goes now from these sort of bright yellows of about 3 weeks ago to these powder blues and soft pinks at the beginning of May, with the exception of the tree peonies that I'm just about to show you, and then explodes into a crimson red with all these roses towards the middle and later part of June. So it really changes colours, and that's part of the joy of gardening. Another peony in here, not doing nearly as well as the one on the wall, but again struggling a little bit for light and space and nutrients, no doubt. Need to have a look around the base of that, but this border is really heavily planted. It's part of the management to try and suppress some of the growth of the ground elder and weeds. This is one of the tree peonies that again has been here for a long period of time. A yellow cupped flower, and this year it's doing as well as it's previously ever done. We've got some more Camassias. We're seeing these naturalised in grass like this over at Horton Hall in West Norfolk, and absolutely fell for just the beauty of them coming up through a grass planting like this with early spring bulbs. We've struggled to get them established. They do take longer to get their feet down and get going, and they do like a little bit of moisture. We found out the other day when we were buying a few more. I think a lot of the plantings we've got in this orchard are a little on the dry side for them, but this in dappled shade just under the oak tree above my head and apple tree in front of it, it's definitely suited this one. Not as tall as the one in the border where it's got no grass competition, but nonetheless beautiful spire of this mauvey purpley blue this time of year. Here's another one of those Camassias, been planted in this border on the long border side of the orchard. Powdery blue, very pale one with completely different centre here with those long stamens sticking out. Again, not really thriving. I think we're going to try moving this one after it's finished flowering this year. It's a lovely coloured variety, nice and tall, but I think just needs a bit more light and moisture to really get going. So we'll dig that up, probably get 10 or 20 bulbs from the base of this, but as you can see, only one sticking a flower stem up this year, a sign that it's not particularly happy. Apple blossom on this tree, really just at its very best now. Just look at nothing quite as beautiful as a brack of unfolding apple blossom in the morning sunshine. Absolutely gorgeous, and big enough volume of it to make an impact from a distance as well. This corner's always been problematic. We've got a compost heap in the back, hidden by a couple of buddleias, some roses, another rhododendron in the corner that's struggled a bit. But the catmints in the foreground here struggled a little bit because of the shade in this quite dry corner of the garden. It's also got to compete with all the deer that naturally come down this perimeter. There's a deer entry just behind that compost heap, which they all hop through into the road and across into the fields beyond. Usually not before they've gorged themselves on the plants in this garden, which they tend to use as a salad bar for large proportions of the year, but it's lovely to see them when you're in the house and suddenly see the movement. Rhododendrons looking very, very good. Best they've done in years, because we had some wet last year which really suited these. Problem growing them here on this bank, as we said before, is they dry out terribly, but just look at them this year. Lovely big blasts. Red ones are a couple of weeks later. Showed you the 4 pinks that we've got interspersed now, coming to the end of their flowering season and browning off, but the reds just at their very best now. More late narcissi. This one's always one of the last to flower on this little corner of the grass bank. Lovely little almost green centres, just with that orange tip on it. It's really quite unusual one, this one. Don't know the name because I didn't plant them. They're absolutely beautiful, giving us that splash of colour. And a long view through this what now turns to meadow for about 2 to 3 months. We'll normally cut this when all the leaf from the flowering bulbs in this area of the garden are completely dry and gone, towards the end of August. Looking back down this little path towards the house, we've got this new border of iris to go and show you now, which was sitting in pools of water for a large proportion of the early spring and late winter, but just look at them now. Flower stems up again, absolutely full of promise. And iris is another one of those plants I just love watching and seeing the flower buds develop, because they're so fleeting in the actual time that they actually flower. I do think this is going to give us a very good display in its first year as well. And just behind me, what I thought was going to be a blind run of newly planted iris. Just look what's happened over the last week. Really wasn't expecting this because we put these in so late, but a mass of flower spikes just coming up. Incredible, because these were planted very, very late at the end of last season. We've just gravelled around the bases to try and reduce the weeding in this, what is very poor soil. It's an ideal little iris border, this. We've got 3 rows. They're all the same variety, and I think the long view through these, maybe not this year, but certainly in subsequent years, is going to be spectacular. If we get, there must be probably around 300 to 400 of them in this planting. Should be really good. Planters had some flowers put in it for the year, which are looking very, very nice. But just look at these alliums in the back of this border. Had mixed luck with our alliums this year. The new ones I bought and planted out last year, I made a complete mess and put them in the wrong area, which was just too wet, and we've hardly got any of them surviving this year. Plenty of seedlings off them, but these ones on a higher, drier bank are really looking well. Again, planted with peonies and an underplanting, or sprinkling really, of forget-me-not along the base. These borders are really filling in the new quadrant garden. Geraniums starting to flower now, these early herbaceous geraniums, and the catnymphs. I don't think it's going to be more than a few days if we continue to get this warm weather. Let's look at this flower bud before we start getting swarms of the bees round onto these to start feeding. It'll be a couple of weeks before the roses start, I think, but generally all looking very good. Let me go and show you the irises at the end, because again, these are doing really well this year. Here we are, tucked in just behind one of what is becoming my favourite spots in the garden to sit and look at. Just look at, again, the colour coming on these with the black boards behind them. I think these are going to show absolutely beautifully. I can't honestly say what varieties we've got in here. This was a sort of mixed planting of where we dumped everything that came out of the other borders. We had to move quite a few of them in the courtyard, as well as the builders moved around with diggers. So whole different variety. You can see the ones that were sat underwater here, and this is one of the lower lying areas of the garden. Again, planted very, very late. Some of these only went in beginning of this spring. Much smaller plants. This was the sort of scrag end little bits of corn and stuff that we just looked at and thought, oh, well, might do something, let's pop it in. All coming up, all survived the absolute swamp that they were sitting in for a long period of time. But this one's even got a flower spike coming up on it, so we'll get to see what the colours are on this one. But I'm just going to leave them, I think, for this year, unless we're developing new parts of the garden as the barns get completed, and we'll see how they do. Well, this is my 2 runs of alliums I was mentioning earlier. Bought 250 bulbs, and if I've got 20 in this run and 3 or 4 in this one that are actually surviving, I'm lucky. But just look, the lavender has also suffered from the moisture down here, browned off on this end. It should all be looking like that with the fresh green shoots coming along. Just too wet, low-lying bit of the garden. All you can do with this is rethink. If it survives, then we'll keep it. If it breaks bud on this, then we'll keep it. But if it's going to struggle, then we have to rethink this planting, because there's no way we can effectively raise this level. Well, there's no easy way we can raise this level without taking it out in any case. And we'll probably just extend the catmints. But there again, you can see the difference that the moisture levels have made here. Too much wet and they just don't like it. Lovely big plants at the far end. Skinny little things that are just thinking about it, but could be much farther on if the soil had been better down this end. Peonies don't mind it at all. These are young peonies, so I'm looking at those thinking, yeah, not going to do too much this year, but they'll have a little bit of bud and flower later in the season. A long view up this border now. This is why it's one of my favourite places to come and sit, particularly when the sun works its way round to the south, which is in the far distance. But with that pigeon bath, as I call it, in the middle of this quadrant border, with the azaleas behind, lemon trees now out. Weren't particularly enjoying the cold weather we were having, but they'll survive, and it's certainly reducing the amount of scale insect that we've got on them. And I think we're going to get that hedge of iris just behind the white bench as well. Now this is the other wisteria we've got, the really long bract one, which is just coming out this time of year. This is west facing, so in full shade at this time of year. These are incredible long bracts. They extend to around 4 feet to the tip, open at the proximal end, and then trickle open all the way down to the far end. Not a particularly brilliant colour compared to the other one. I do wish this was either a pure white or a darker blue, but little pea-like flowers with that sort of powdery grey blue, yellow throat, and the darker blue of the, don't know what you call that bit on a clematis flower. I suppose it's just a petal, isn't it, or a bract. I'm not absolutely certain they're petals at all. But anyway, once it's fully open, it does give us a lovely display. And we've got this pruned. You see me using this as a demonstration for how to prune wisteria and form these lateral side shoots to get all this break of flower bud. It's doing very well. And underplanting it is this little run of agapanthus, which again looking very well at this time of year, and in full shade until the late afternoon. And you can see running along the bottom there, these shoots or runners coming out of the wisteria. We've actually rooted a couple of those. See them here, how took that stem, bent it down into a pot, brought it back out, and just look at it now. a young wisteria plant. I'm going to have to watch that these don't put roots right the way through the bottom, because they're starting to grow away and we either need to find a spot for those or a new home for them. Let's go round to where we've traditionally started these garden tours previously, in the old vegetable garden in the back of these barns. Morning sun at this time of year, shaded behind the opening oak and beech trees. It's starting to waken up, getting some birds through into the garden. Don't know what's making that racket in the background. I think it could be a roe deer. We're very pleased with this. It's filling out. We've got a few jobs to do this weekend over the bank holiday. We're going to try and plant out all these narcissi and daffodils, which are just about finished, to free up the pots for some summer bedding. Got some iris in here. The oxeye daisies already just about starting to flower here in this sunny position. Yeah, just look at that. It's not going to be more than a few days of warm weather if it continues before this is a mass of white and yellow daisies. Forget-me-nots just trickling through the back. Some of the herbaceous coming through. It's all looking very, very lush and green, and then in about a month's time we'll get an explosion from this rose arch behind me, with the Paul's Himalayan musk now almost swamping that apple tree in the distance. I'm going to have to do a little bit of repair to the what was an old fruit frame just here. Got a pair of pigeons that come and sit on that and coo at each other every evening, and it's starting to warp badly, and the rest's fallen down as on the ground. Actually, it's rotten completely through, so I'm going to put them a new one up, try and keep the structure there. Got a rose that I've planted on the right hand aspect, should come on nicely and give us a display. And then we've got all the overspill, more iris and everything down on this border, which again this time of day is in full shade. Looks like a good gardening day, but as I mentioned, we're actually off to the Beccles Antiques Fair for the morning, and hopefully if this fine weather continues we'll get an evening's gardening here in Norfolk. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed the tour.